Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. So today we are going to speak with Paula Zirinsky, who is one of our thought leaders here at the BD Different community. And as I've said previously, the goal of the BD Different community is to bring together peers across accounting, legal, consulting, the professional services space to just have a collaborative environment where we can all learn together to understand how we can change with the times with everything that's going on within our industries. So whether it be private equity investment or lots of lateral movement or remote work, artificial intelligence, you name it. It's just changing a lot of how professional services is done. So we've assembled this group of thought leaders who have experience across industries and across company sizes to share their knowledge with us so that we can ensure that we're not just sticking with the status quo and that we're changing with the times and we're all learning how to be different together. So as I said, today we have Paula Zirinsky. Paula is a marketing and communications and branding executive. She's been at big law at Morgan Lewis. She's been at K2 as a CMO and joined when they were an early stage startup. She's got a lot of great experience. And I think that her experience is going to help all of us understand how we can use branding and our personal brand specifically to help us be different. So Paula, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about how you got involved and why you got involved with BD Different?
Sure. I'm Paula Zirinsky. I have a company called Zirinsky Strategy. I work with a lot of leadership teams on marketing initiatives, audit surveys, assessments, roadmaps. But the most fun part of what we do is thought leadership, branding, and intentional marketing initiatives for our clients. So I work across professional services, mostly because I worked in professional services for the last 20, 25 years. As Michael said, I spent 15 years in big law, gradually getting to bigger and bigger defense side firms. So I started out at Cadwalader, Fried Frank, Wilvillo Abramowitz, and then Morgan Lewis. And then I went to work for K2 Intelligence, later rebranding it to K2 Integrity. I wasn't born into the legal universe. I am a packaged goods marketer. I went to live in Cincinnati, Ohio, like all packaged goods marketers after business school. And then at one point in my career, Daimler-Benz, Mercedes-Benz found me, and I started working for the chairman's office in corporate branding and corporate communications. And I write a lot about that. It was there that I discovered what the soul of a brand was, and it has affected me ever since. With respect to BD Different and business development and rainmaking, business development is very interesting to me. And many law firms, they kind of separate the thought leadership communications people from the BD people. But the reality is to do effective business development, you have to have a keen eye on thought leadership and personal branding. And that's what I've always done in every firm that I've been in. I've really known what makes every lawyer different at the firm, what makes every practice different, and how can we make them push the needle a little bit and become well known for who they are. And I'm very proud of the work that I've done at different law firms, helping them push that needle. I think that uh, business development rainmakers and thought leaders have a little something extra in their bellies that makes them push out and do more. And that's what I like to help people find.
That's great. Yeah, there was a study that came out last year from DCM Insights that focused on this, the idea of like an activator or the rainmaker. And it was to your point, it was only, I think it was 20% of all lawyers are actually have that activator profile and those behaviors. And so to your point, I think there is something special about those
Exactly.
individuals that do figure it out. And some of it's natural, but then some of it's learned. And I think that's what we're hoping with this community. We can help address those learned elements of being a business developer.
Absolutely.
Um, so the first question I had for you is like everyone generally as a concept knows that it's good to have a personal brand. It's good to have a corporate brand. I mean, everyone wants to be Coca-Cola, right? It's the most most recognized logo in the world. But professional service practitioners often aren't very good about intentionally developing their personal brand, or they don't use the resources that are readily available to them. Why do you think that is?
I think that lawyers and law firms, if you step back a bit, they're usually very focused on their own practices and they're very siloed. So when you really look at the brand for a firm, sometimes they're at odds with that as well. And you have to really teach them what it means to have a strong brand and how it really helps you. You need to be known for something. When it comes to personal branding, many lawyers feel, I don't have time. I'm doing billable work. I'm busy. I need to do this. I have all the work that I need. I actually had a partner tell me that once. I don't need to do business development. My phone keeps ringing. And I said to him, one day your phone's not going to ring. You're going to be begging for my time. But That is a really big issue. There, oftentimes partners in law firms don't have that long-term focus to focus on themselves. What sets them apart? What is it that they love to do, and what is it that they do well? There are other reasons why they don't do personal branding, though. Some think it's entirely self-promotional. I don't want to push ahead of anybody else. I don't want anyone to find fault with me. I don't want people to say you're lying. You don't really do that. I don't think it is at par with the job and the role of being an attorney. And that also, obviously, I don't believe. But it's really important that you get past that and that you can talk with people about how it's not self-promotional. Um, Sometimes lawyers think that their work speaks for itself. It does, but there's always in the background pushing them in. There's a very famous scene in the movie Jerry Maguire where he's talking, his client is talking in front of the cameras, and there's an arm, and Jerry Maguire, the title character, says, "See that arm? That's me pushing my client into the camera to speak, to be on camera." And that's what we need to do with lawyers oftentimes. We need to push them in so that their work can be brought to the surface. Push marketing, not pull marketing. And then some think that their network's just going to do it for them. Why should I have a brand? And there are all sorts of reasons why you don't want to do that. Personal branding and establishing a personal brand exposes your vulnerabilities. And the reason why it does that is the beginning pieces of the puzzle to establishing a personal brand. You need to do self-evaluation. You need to think about, what is it that I think I'm good at? What do I really like? And what are my goals? And you need to write it down. If you don't write it down, it doesn't exist. You need to write it down. But then you need to get verification. You need to really have other people that you've worked with, you work for, you work across the table from clients to validate. Ask them the same questions. What do they think you do well? What do they think you want to do? And what are your goals? And then you have to compare those things. And that's where the vulnerability comes in, because it may not be what you want to see. Some people may say, "You're not really good at that," or "That's your really the spot that you really need to push more." And that's what terrifies people from personal branding. But it is the most important part of personal branding, and it puts you on the road to thought leadership.
Yeah, there's so much you said there that I'd love to hit on. I think in particular the idea of vulnerability, and I think vulnerability is a really unpleasant feeling for lawyers in particular. I mean, lawyers do so much to prepare for every court hearing, and they do so much to prepare for every filing, and they do so much to where they do everything they can to never be vulnerable,
Yeah.
which makes it really difficult. We were just speaking with another one of our thought leaders, Jeff Antaya, who is the former CMO of Plant Moran, and he was saying the same thing with accountants. Accountants, one reason um, they don't bring up conversations that could potentially generate new business is because they don't want to ever be in a situation where they might be perceived as not having all the answers. And so I think similarly with from a personal branding perspective, if it exposes the vulnerabilities of an individual where it says like, I am good at this and I might not be as good at that. First of all, that's fine. Second of all, I think that when you have law firms that have 30, 40 practice groups and there's so much specialization and everyone has a niche and the law is getting more and more complex and it's just evolving so quickly, it doesn't make sense that anyone would have all the answers. But there's this mindset at firms where you're supposed to, I think.
Yeah, I think vulnerability is a major piece of it. I've always been known when I was inside law firms doing comms and doing thought leadership of really prepping my lawyers really well. Having that hymn sheet, having the messaging, making them really focus on it. I once had a lawyer say to me, "You know my messages so well. Why don't you do the interview for me?" I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. You need to know them well. You prepare for your client meetings. You prepare for your court appearances. You need to prepare to speak on the outside, whether it's a speaking engagement, a press interview, writing an article, talking to a journalist."
Yeah. Yeah. One of the best pieces of advice I got when I was transitioning from high school to college back in the day was it was don't just let friendships happen, because if your friendships just happen, you don't know who you're going to end up with. And you might not like where you end up with. When I was preparing for our conversation today, that story came to mind, or that kind of piece of advice, because I think similarly with your brand, if you just let your brand happen, it might not be what you want it to be. What do you think are the risks of not crafting an intentional personal brand?
I think intention is everything, and I love your analogy. My mother used to tell me, pick your friends, they don't pick you. Why did she say that? Because you really want to focus on who you are and what you stand for. You don't want a mixed message about yourself. You don't want somebody else to define what it is you do. You want to be perceived the way you want to be perceived so people know what they're going to get from you. You want your clients to know what you can do for them. And all of that is mixed up in your personal brand. The messaging is everything, and you can't let somebody else do it for you, and you can't just let it be on the sidelines. You need to really be proactive about it and know what it is. What is your purpose? What is your positioning? What are your messages?
Yeah, totally, totally resonates. Sounds like our mothers
Our
and our
mothers went to the same school, right?
exactly. Um, well, and could you provide a few instances? I think with the brand, it's super important for it to be authentic. I think you don't want to force the brand. You are who you are, and you should, especially from a professional perspective, you can try to pivot and you can create new versions and new angles and new areas of expertise, but like authenticity really comes through.
Mhm.
How do you think? What's the process of making sure that the brand that you do create is authentic? And then could you maybe give us a couple examples of instances where you've seen someone really do a great job of creating an authentic professional brand and how that benefited them from a business development perspective?
Sure. I think that first it's important to look at a brand. A brand has two components. It has the emotional side. That's the visual you get in your mind of something when you see the name of a brand or you see a logo. You brought up Coca-Cola. I usually use Mercedes as my example. You see the Mercedes logo and you get a sense of, wow, I love that car, right? It's the emotional pull that you have with Mercedes-Benz. But then there are the rational components to a brand. Those are the differentiators. What makes it the best? What makes it different? How do you break away from the pack? And to have a brand, you need to have both the emotional and the rational components come together. And it's the same thing with personal branding. What is it that you do well, you want to be known for? What is the practice that you want to do? And how do people feel when they're working for you? Bring to the party. What is the purpose? What is the value? And that's the only way you really create a strong brand. And you have to do it for yourself. Sadly, you have to sit down and figure it all out. And if you don't, you will miss opportunities to do work you want to do. You will miss opportunities to grow. You will miss opportunities if you wanted to make a change or get a promotion or make, a shift in your career. If you don't have that roadmap for yourself, your personal brand, it's going to be really hard to do it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Well, I think you hit on a good point there too. So with a brand, there's the emotional aspect and then the rational aspect. And the rational aspect is where you really get differentiation. And I think that that word differentiation is only more important when there's 8 billion people on the planet and then there's social media and there's the internet and there's always on business and there's so many um, platforms for people to spread their personal brand and to grow their network. So I think that differentiation is even more important. How would you recommend that professionals in kind of busy areas really focus on differentiating themselves from everyone else that's doing something similar?
Right, and I didn't give you my examples. I'm going to tie that in with platforms because there are lots of different platforms that we could look at: social media, television, just overall news media, whatever. So let's talk about a couple of examples, and then I'll talk about specifically LinkedIn, which for this audience is critically important. Let's think about Martha Stewart for a moment. Martha Stewart started as a stockbroker on Wall Street, and she was pretty good at it. She learned financial basics, but she hated every minute of it because what Martha Stewart wanted to be was an entrepreneur. She wanted to spread creativity. Literally, she wanted to make things look pretty. There's nothing wrong with that. She wanted to help you make your home comfortable, pretty, and the best that it could be. And so Martha stepped back and said, this is what I'm going to do. She rejiggered herself. She changed her whole brand, her whole being to become Martha Stewart, an empire. Now we know she had some legal problems later on down the line, but nevertheless, she built an incredible empire. Another person that did the same thing in television is Oprah Winfrey. Oprah was always known as being a compassionate, honest, open, authentic television person, right? There are a lot of TV hosts. There was only one Oprah. She was able to expand that into her product offerings, her other business partnerships, her relationships with other media companies to actually invest in a very thoughtful manner based on what was important to her and to inspire the people that watched her and that were part of her whole gestalt, her whole audience, to help them move on to what they wanted to do. So I always think of her, she's like perfect. She often speaks about it all starts with my personal brand, knowing what it was that was important to me and that I wanted to do. And my last example is somebody that I'm really, really fond of, and that's Richard Branson. Richard Branson built Virgin Group based on fun, energy, environment, authenticity, adventure. His company's brand and his brand were one and the same. And everything he does is completely authentic, and that's how he's helped grow all of his businesses. But authenticity is really something that's hard. You could say you're authentic, you have to show it. So there's a tape out there on LinkedIn, actually, of Richard Branson at a Virgin Galactica spaceship taking off to go God knows where with two female astronauts in it. And there's Richard Branson in Antigua, Barbados, wherever he was, with the family. And they're watching this, and you could see they're all biting their nails and they're leaning forward to watch. And then the spaceship takes off and they start jumping up and down and hugging each other. And then they all start crying. And the camera shows Richard Branson crying because he understood on so many levels how important this was for the mother, for the woman going up in space, for his company, for just the whole sense of adventure. Tears were streaming down his face, and he was not embarrassed at all. And that is true authenticity. Now, with respect to platforming and social media and LinkedIn, authenticity is a big part of it. You have to know who you are. You also have to know what it is that you do. And toward that end, I often tell people don't think of you to many, right? That's a marketing strategy. You want to think of yourself as you to another person, one to one. And you want to get that person's face and business and problem in your mind, and you want to craft your messages and your business to them. That's your client, that's your prospect. And if you can really hone in on what's important to a person or a small group of people, it's the quality of, and you'll get the reaction that you want versus being really, really broad. And that is being not just authentic, but you're really niching it out. You're really making it so that it makes the most sense, and you're creating value for huge groups of people because you've really narrowed it down. So I think that's a way that you really have to face social media. I feel really bad when we all started working on LinkedIn 10, 15 years ago. Life was very simple then. But now all of your connections don't even get what you push out. And you have major companies with the ability to put out 2, 3 posts a day. And most professionals simply cannot do that. So be specific, be you, be authentic, find your niche, find what you're good at, tell your stories, create personality with it, and then you'll succeed.
Yeah, I love that. There's the authenticity piece too. So I feel authenticity and vulnerability have certainly been a theme of our conversation today. And I think that when you are authentic and you're inherently vulnerable by being authentic, and then it's not, your authenticity might not be for everyone. Maybe not everyone likes that brand, and that's fine. It's like maybe people don't like seeing someone like Richard Branson cry. They think, he's the CEO, shouldn't be crying. Or I love Martha Stewart's brand in that example too, because her legal snafu is actually now part of her brand, and people love it. And
Right.
she incorporated that so well. And the partnership with Snoop Dogg, and then going to the Olympics and the full dressage for the horse equestrian events. It's like
They were
she just
terrific.
is so good. And now Snoop Dogg, a West Coast hip hop star, and Martha Stewart, who's much more associated with wealthy home decorators, have made this awesome brand together, and that authenticity is just paid off in spades for
Mhm.
both of them. And so yeah, I think that the authenticity is core to so much of that.
Yeah, I totally agree as well. And the differentiation. I mean, there are many hip hop stars. There's only one Snoop Dogg.
Exactly. And now the whole world literally knows who he is
Knows who
because of
he
the
is.
Olympics. Yeah, I
Exactly.
love that. Well, and one question we're asking everyone too is with regards to we have so many thought leaders that have areas of expertise across whether it be branding or it be lead generation or it be what have you. Specifically to branding and personal branding, you work with a lot of people. You've worked with a lot of attorneys. You've worked with a lot of different organizations. For individuals, for just lawyers, what's the one easiest thing they could do this week that would just make a big difference in how their personal brand is presented and how it helped them kind of BD different?
Right. I thought a lot about this because when you're in a law firm and you're doing business development and you have someone get promoted to partner, we always tell them the same thing from a BD perspective. Join an organization, join a committee, get in a leadership position, and get known. And find your niche, find the area of practice you want to practice in. Well, it's no different with your personal brand. It's actually more important. Really think about your self-reflection. What is it that brings you joy? What do you like to do and what are you good at? And start focusing all of your efforts around that. You can't be all things to all people. You want to bring in areas of business that focus on what you want to be known at, what you're known for, what you do well, and what brings you joy. And if you really start to think about that, suddenly you'll be writing, you'll be noticing articles, you'll be reaching out to clients, you'll be adding to the conversation. And that's incredibly important about personal branding. It's not just you. You want to use your personal brand to be a launch pad for thought leadership. A thought leader doesn't just deliver news and information, they add to the conversation, they push the needle forward. You can't do that in 1 week, but you can start to define what is it that I want to be known for? What is it that brings me joy? Joy is incredibly important. It's a word we hear a lot about now, but it's incredibly, incredibly important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's great. I think imagine if your legal practice could bring you joy. Like
It
that.
can, it
Yeah.
can. If I have clients that work on things that I have a client that works on social impact and they really work on cases that do good and they take this seriously, that things make an impact on other people and that's how they decide what they want to do, and this brings them joy and they're very good at it and everyone knows that
I
it
love
can
that.
happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's certainly that's the utopia. We can all aim for it. But well, Paula, this has been super helpful and super insightful. We're excited to share this with our BD different community. I think a lot of people will find your insights on authenticity, vulnerability, creating your personal brand, and being intentional about it to hopefully help them BD different and to understand how they can have a better reputation within the market and a personal brand in the market and how that authentically actually drives business as well.
Thanks, it's been great. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of
Happy to be
course.
part of the community.
Thank you, Paula.